Sima Samar is the chairwoman of Afghanistan Independent Human Rights Commission and founder of the Shuhada organization, which supports the education and health needs of Afghan refugee women and girls. The organization operates dozens of schools for girls and boys in Afghanistan and schools for Afghan refugees in Pakistan. During the repressive rule of Taliban, Samar still managed to keep schools and clinics open in Afghanistan. In 2002, she returned to Afghanistan and served as the first deputy of chair of Minister of Women Affairs in the interim administrative of Afghanistan. She was forced to resign, however, after she received death threats for questioning Sharia law and advocating for women's rights to choose not to wear a burqa. She served as a United Nations Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in Sudan from 2005 to 2009. She is the recipient of numerous prizes, including the Voice of the Courage Award and the John Humphrey Freedom Award. The World Economic Forum named Sima a 1995 Global Leader for Tomorrow. Forbes ranked her among the 100 most powerful women in 2004, 2006, and 2007. In 2012, she was the recipient of the Right Livelihood Award, as well as the Mother Teresa Award. Sima is one of the most influential people in the world advocating for other women and minority groups. Her humanitarian pursuits have not come without serious risk to her life, and yet Sima Samar has never deterred her efforts. As quoted in the Afghanistan Foreign Policy and Government Guide, she once stated, "I have always been in danger, but I don't mind. I believe that we will die one day. So I said, let's take the risk and help somebody else." I have huge respect to you, Sima. So let us start by asking you, how are you? How do you feel? And where are you right now?
Yes, my friend, thank you very much. It's my pleasure to know you, to be your friend, and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. I'm outside of Afghanistan. I came actually earlier, late June in the US to visit my family. But then, unfortunately, the situation rapidly changed and I stayed here. Yeah, I think I'm like all the others around the world and my own people in Afghanistan. I'm still in shock. What's happened in Afghanistan? Although I have to admit that the government, unfortunately, was very corrupt and very exclusive. And the bad governance actually gave the possibility to fall down everything. So we are currently in this situation. We don't know what will happen next. And I just hope, as a citizen in this country watching 43 years of war, different groups coming to power and going, and violating people's human rights. And of course, naturally, women suffering much more than anybody else. Not only in one side, but both sides, women are the victims, because if anyone dies from opposition, from the government, whoever has a family, has a mother, and always mothers and sisters and wife and daughters are the main victim of the ongoing conflict and bloodshed. So I don't want to show the Afghan woman as a victim always. They are brave, they're strong. They watch all these destruction of their houses, killing of their husband, brothers, and fathers, and their sons and daughters, but they still survive. but we need to recognize their suffering. And that is what we need to do.
Right. Your work on human rights and social work is recognized around the world. And would you please tell us about your career and how feminism is part of this career?
Yes, as you said, that I spend a lot of my time. I actually started to struggle for equality and human rights when I was quite young, because I saw the discrimination and I feel the discrimination because being a girl, because being a minority group in Afghanistan. So that was, I started earlier, and I tried to find ways to promote equality, because why we should suffer, why we should be discriminated because we born a woman, a girl. And we don't have choice on that. One. Number two, I think without women, the humanity will not continue. At least until now. Maybe in the future, human beings start making humans in the machine, but until now, woman is the important part of continuation of the humanity. So why we should be discriminated? Why women should be seen as a second-class citizen? So that was my aim. I mean, for me, feminism is to protect the dignity of human being. Being woman, being third gender, fourth gender, being a man. We all have to live with same dignity. Particularly, I want to say here as a Muslim, that we do believe that everybody is created by God. The people who are opposing women's existence or trying to put women as an inferior position is trying to fix the mistake of the God. I feel, for me, feminism is to protect human dignity and push for a human dignity to be respected under any circumstances. Disaster, war, conflict, being in any country, you have to have equal rights and live with full dignity. So that was the reason that I started working on this field, and I'm doing it. I always say that it's difficult for the people who have not seen or felt the discrimination because of their race, because of their gender, because of their social level. Although in Afghanistan, we don't have very much cost problem as we have in the region, but still it does exist. As we say, the Khan, the feudal, the one who has more land and possibility, is different than the one who's working for that Khan. So it's always exists. But I think full equality maybe on social affairs is not possible, but full dignity is possible. And that we have to fight for it.
Very well said. Sima, I know you have been struggling in Afghanistan politics and Afghanistan bureaucracy. How was it to be a political or bureaucrat within this Afghanistan environment? How difficult it was? How was it? How was it like?
I think it's quite difficult because you are dealing with people who mentally is not prepared to accept women equally.
Equal.
Yeah. And they think always that why everything should be related to women. But in fact, everything is related to women. I mean, when they talk about, okay, that's why in Afghanistan case, in coup d'etat in 1978, and after that, the invasion of the USSR, it's always men were important because they were carrying the gun. And women in Afghanistan were suffering because they were not involved on creating the conflict in war, but they were the one to be subject to a lot of discrimination, because when it's a conflict, when it's insecurity, of course, women are more vulnerable. But then even the family member who might be even thinking equally or believe on equal rights between men and women, but they try to protect. Under the umbrella of protection, they restrict your movement. They restrict your freedom of expression, for example, and so on. So there was a lot of pressure on women in Afghanistan. And then when I was in politics, or still in politics, they always see usually on a second-class citizen. Give you an example that our president who ran away, which is a shame. I mean, he's a shame for the history, for the people of Afghanistan and so on. He was telling publicly to one of the person who criticized him for corruption. He said, if he cannot prove the allegation, he should wear a scarf. Yeah? Wearing a scarf is a second, it is inferior. It's put you in a second class. So I told him, I went publicly and said that he has to apologize. I criticized publicly in the media. Then he said, no, he is very much promoting women's rights. And I said, no, you're doing it for your benefit. Your way of thinking is not changed. You still see scarf or wearing a scarf is a different status than yours. So that is to fight in every single things. Then, this was a public speech of, if you cannot prove the allegation, he named that person. If you cannot prove the allegation on me, when you said I'm corrupt, then you have to wear a scarf. So you could see the mentality. This is every day's activity, because they talk about your clothes, they talk about your appearances, they talk about your hair, they talk about your talking in your style. And then they, without any kind of accountability or any kind of moral responsibility or ethic, they blame you that you're this and this.
We have this similar saying, like man says, if you prove your allegation right, then I'm gonna wear a skirt, for example.
Yep. Yeah.
We have very similar saying, and it's the same, which is generated by mostly men.
Tell the young generation that build your capacity, have knowledge, because nobody can take your knowledge. They can usually destroy your building. They usually can take your diamond or gold, but they cannot take your knowledge, even if they put you in prison. So if we build the knowledge, we have to make a space for ourselves. They cannot ignore you then.
Knowledge is freedom.
Yep.
You're right. Sima, so how do you evaluate the situation in Afghanistan? Because, you know, in last 15, 20 days, we see dramatic changes. And now you have a new government, which is maybe it's interim government, but still it shows how radical Taliban could be. So how do you evaluate the situation in Afghanistan now?
Well, I think a few points that I would like to raise here. One, my advice to the Taliban is that they cannot ignore half of the population. They cannot deny it. So their denial is not going to change anything. So my call on the international community is that they are not doing a favor for us when they raise the rights of women and rights of all people and protecting human rights. It is their responsibility. It is their job, and they have to do that. The third point is that we, Afghanistan, is a member of the collective human community. We cannot live in isolated island. We are surrounded by other countries. So the problem in Afghanistan is a problem for humanity. We like it or not, it will reach to other countries. So my call on the regional government and our neighboring countries, that we cannot choose our neighbor. It's beyond our choice. But we can choose to live with peace with our neighboring countries. And they should not forget that the problem in Afghanistan will reach them. I keep saying that if you put a fire in your neighbor house, the fire will reach you. If the fire doesn't reach you, the smoke will reach you and make you cry. They cannot stop smoke within the neighboring house. This is very much daily practice. So that's why they have to be aware that it is a problem, and that should be solved in favor of human dignity. So when we speak about, let's say, as I said, that we are part of the overall humanity and member of the United Nations and so on. I mean, we all of us, including Afghanistan, signed the SDG goals. We have to respect that. And SDG goals is not saying that who's superior and who's inferior. And our religion, in fact, doesn't say that. It is clear verses in Quran that every human being born with dignity, with karamat. Nobody is there to get the karamat that I have. Because the people who's trying to ignore that they're born of their mothers, they in fact ignore their own dignity. How you born superior from somebody who's inferior? This is simple logic. It doesn't require PhD. They don't expect PhD anyway. But it doesn't require PhD. It doesn't require very extensive knowledge. You cannot produce anything. I mean, when you produce a fruit, when you produce a wheat, you cannot produce wheat from another grain. You produce wheat from wheat. You produce a good quality apricot from a good quality of apricot tree. So how inferior is your mother and how you become superior? You made of her blood. You feed it with her blood. I mean, why women during their lactation, why they don't have their menses? Because that blood is used to produce milk. And they cannot deny that. Even if they deny, they don't change the fact.
So do you have any proposal on what could be done differently? Any thought about the process? Do you think this silencing of the woman on this negotiation table played any role in this current outcome?
Well, I think they not only silencing the women, but putting a small number of women by the government who claim to be, I mean, who obligated to the international treaties and international instruments was not a good move. Then secondly, they were not really listening to nobody, but particularly to women.
So any particular proposal for stopping Taliban from pursuing violence against women and girls? For example, do you think that the international community could play a role to decrease this oppression? Or do you think Turkish government could play any role in this process?
Well, I think the international community can play a role. As I said, that it's their moral obligation to protect people who are in need or in danger. The Turkish government can play a stronger role because they are Muslim and they can have influence. So I propose that they should be engaged with them, but do not negotiate on principle of human rights and women's rights.
You think that Turkish government could play a role to stop Taliban violence on women and girls?
Exactly. I mean, they can. Turkish as a majority Muslim country can be example of Islamic country. We are not the only one.
So there is a dilemma here in Turkey. On one hand, President Erdogan says Taliban is not. I mean, we can talk with Taliban. We can recognize Taliban on one hand, but on the other hand, Turkish women movement says don't recognize Taliban. If you do recognize Taliban, then we don't recognize you. So it's a certain dilemma that I am also facing. What does specifically Turkish government should do in this process, in this situation?
No, I said that they should be engaged. Engagement is different than full recognition. So they should be, the engagement should bring some positive changes, not to promote the negative behavior.
Any particular policy proposal, for example, Taliban of schooling of girls and women?
I think they should say, as a Muslim, as I said, that everybody born with dignity and they have to respect that dignity. Education is key. It's not a luxury, it's a basic human rights. An educated woman can be a better Muslim than uneducated woman. It's clear. You can understand the religion better and I can understand the religion better than any uneducated woman. So if we really want even the way they put the whole thing, if he really wants a good society with good faith, we should let them be educated. And again, as I said, that education is not a luxury. It's not only written anywhere that it's a hadith that the Prophet said that on that time that every Muslim has to get education, even if it's in China. I mean, the transportation means were different. So that is, he didn't say it's only for men. Or when the first message to the Prophet was Iqra, read. That read did not say only men read.
What I hear from you is references, policy based on references to religious Islam, whereas we could also make references for example, CEDAW or Human Rights Act type of international conventions.
No, if you remember, I said before that the obligation is another issue, but even from the religious point of view and or international obligation,
Mm-hmm.
all the instruments that Afghanistan ratified, none of them, in my view, is against Islam. If they say a woman has the right to work, where in Islam said that the women are not allowed to work?
And last question is, what would you recommend to Turkish activists, feminist members of the women movement who are now searching ways to show solidarity with Afghan women? What could we do in order to show our solidarity with women at your country?
One, I think, stand with us, because if we are in danger, if we are receiving violence, I keep saying that if we are the small finger or the small nail of humanity, of female sector of humanity, or female half of the humanity, if this one hurts, it bothers everyone.
Right.
That is one. The second thing that I think that we should all do, support education program in Afghanistan, if you can.
Mm-hmm.
You can raise funds, you can fund the local NGOs, they can take the program of education in different corner of the country.
Great. Thank you so much, Sima.
Thank you.
And
I hope I was not too long.
It wasn't long at all.